Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my March wrap up, which I wasn't 100% sure whether to do or not because I have only read 3 books this month and that seems not very much. But I have decided to do it anyway because 2 of those books were pretty big, so it's not necessarily that I didn't read a lot. I didn't read as much as I would normally, I would say that, but I did read some pretty big books in there. And another reason I wasn't going to do this was because I did a book review and a readathon with a vlog to go along with it. So both those books already have a lot of video content on my channel anyway. But there is one book that I did read that I haven't mentioned really at all on my channel, so I did want to kind of put that in there, but I didn't want to do a full sit down review of it, like a single video. So I'll just do this now and then kind of do a summary of the other 2 books. So if you don't want to watch a whole video, you don't have to. You can just watch the few minutes I'll be talking about them in this video instead. So, as I did last week, I have got some statistics for you. I have a lot less because I didn't read anything outside my normal genre. They were all fantasies, they were all adult, I think, and that was most of my statistics. So all I have for you today is the amount of pages I've read, the average pages per day, and the star rating, because I also kind of failed to track how many days I didn't read and how many days I did read. It was a lot less. I did not stick to my reading everyday goal at all. Coming back, it's been a bit of a struggle, I think, for me to get into the reading, especially because one of these books put me in a massive reading slump. So I didn't read a lot this month, but I still managed to read 2,126 pages, which is more than last month. So even though I read 4, I think, physical books last month, I've still managed to read more. And that's averaged out to 68 pages per day, which is 3 more than last month. So I could definitely have read a lot more, but I didn't, and there we go. So my star ratings, I really struggled to pick for all these books, for reasons I'll talk about when I talk about the individual books. But I think I'm going to go with 1 3-star and 2 4-star, but the 4 stars are a varying degree of 4-star. Like 1 is almost a 5-star, like it's very close to 5-star. So that's, I think, what I'm going to go with. That's all the statistics I've got for you. Last month I did do my genre and kind of medium that I read them, but they were all physical books, they were all adult books, and they were all fantasy books, so there's no reason to go into that. So the first book I have to talk about, I don't have it in physical form with me, it's back at my uni accommodation, and that is The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This is a adult fantasy and it's very much military based, so if you like that kind of fantasy, it's definitely one for you. I picked this up because I saw a review on Murphy Napier's channel and she loved it. She said it was a phenomenal debut novel, and I read it and there were definitely elements of it that I can see why she said that, but I think for me, I didn't enjoy the military aspect of it, which was the main focus pretty much, or very much used throughout it. I originally rated it 4 stars when I first finished it because it has quite challenging topics within it. So it deals with loss, it deals with revenge, it deals with almost coming of age but in a revenge depression mode. Those were very good topics and I appreciated those. I think they were done really well, how loss, or loss through murder I suppose, leads to revenge, which leads to kind of obsession and depression and those kind of complicated emotions. I think it did deal with that very well. However, as I said, the military aspect of it was constant throughout, a main kind of descriptive tool throughout it, and I just found it quite repetitive by the end. They dragged on a lot, especially the big fight scenes. Like the prologue, for example, just went on forever and I don't think it needed to be that long, and then there were just continuously more and more sword fights and all that kind of stuff, and I would have rather some more character development within that, apart from this single kind of revenge plotline that was going throughout it. So for those that don't know, this follows a boy who lives in a world where his people have taken over this island, I suppose, and they're constantly at war with the natives of it, and they have these abilities. However, the society is very much divided up into class and has very strict rulings on that, and it depends on physical appearance. So the lower class are physically smaller than the upper class, and then the upper class also have magical abilities that kind of aid them in war and fighting and just general things. So I enjoyed that aspect of it as well, actually, the kind of division of class and the use of class within it, and that's used quite a lot in fantasy, but I think it was done quite well. Yeah, so it follows this boy and he's part of the lower class, and the lower class have to do this fight when they get to a certain age or competition thing, and if they prove themselves they get to become part of the army for that class, and then anyone who doesn't do that kind of becomes like a lower status than even they were before. So it's very much needed that they get into this kind of army, and the day he goes to fight and become this, he ends up fighting a noble, which is obviously very much frowned upon and very much not allowed, and as punishment he's asked to then fight this like super army nobleman, but his father steps in, and the kind of repercussions of that whole thing is what triggers the rest of the plot and the story of his revenge. So it was very good in that aspects of it, and I really did appreciate the whole depression revenge thing. The repetitive of the military aspect was just not for me, so if you do like that, definitely go for it. I gave that 4 stars originally, and then I've lowered it to 3 stars just because I don't think it's a book for me, and I tend to rate books higher when I finish them because I feel guilty about rating them lower. So yeah, I have changed that to 3 stars. The next book I finished was one that I have done a review on, and I have put clips on there. It was meant to be a reading vlog, but I forgot to vlog the whole time I was reading, so it didn't turn out to be that, except a few clips. So there's a clip of me being very shocked and dramatic, and then there's a clip of me crying. So if you want to see those emotions, head over to the video. It's quite funny actually. But that is Crescent City by Sarah J Maas. So one of my anticipated releases. I was waiting for this for so long. There was such a drama in getting this book because I ordered the Waterstones edition before I knew that Sarah J Maas was going to do a tour in the UK, and this edition was coming along with it. And then that tour got cancelled, so we could pre-order just the book for it, which I did. So then I was going to get this and the other edition, but I thought the edition was the Waterstones exclusive edition, which had red sprayed edges, but it didn't, even though I'd paid for it, and it was just, I had to take that back, and then I was going to rebuy it, but then I'd already... It was just a palaver to get this book, so I got this book like 3 weeks after everybody else seemed to be reading it, and I was just like so hyped for it. So as soon as I got this, I literally marathoned it. It's like 800 pages long, it's 799 pages I think, so it's quite big, and I managed to read it in like a week. I loved it. I do go into more detail in my review. It is spoiler free, so if you haven't read it, do go along with it, but if you have read it, you can still kind of glean what I'm talking about and the bits that I'm reacting to. So there was one minor problem I had with it, and that is it was quite stereotypical of Sarah J Maas with all her male characters. They're all kind of the same big buff masculine men will be men thing. I would have liked a little bit more diversity in there, and her female characters were sexualised a little bit too much for me, but apart from that, I loved it. Would definitely recommend. If you're at all a fan of Sarah J Maas, definitely go into it. So another thing I saw a lot on social media was that people didn't like the swearing aspect of it, and whilst I can get that, because when I first kind of read it I was like, oh, she's just putting that in there because she wants to show that it's an adult book, not a YA book. I think it actually, by the end of it, you got used to it, and it actually added to the character, and it kind of made the voice of the character more prominent within it, and I didn't actually mind it at all. So that's another thing if you maybe don't like. It does have quite a lot of swearing in it, it does have raunchy scenes in it, so yeah, just be warned. I'm not going to give any spoilers because I think the blurb on normal has a big spoiler in it that I wouldn't want to tell you about, but this follows a girl who's half human, half fae, and the society she lives in is where all creatures, like say werewolves, fae, elves, there's no elves, angels, all that live together cohesively, or semi-cohesively, and they're not like hidden in the underworld or whatever like a lot of urban fantasies are. So she lives in this city. Her best friend is one of the werewolves, and she's actually one of the head of the kind of clans of the werewolves, and then something big happens which I won't tell you about, and it all kind of spirals a murder mystery narrative, and the romance in it is good, the plotline is good, so I just really enjoyed this. I would definitely recommend. Don't be intimidated by the fact that it's 800 pages. It doesn't feel like that. Like, I managed to read 200 pages, 300 pages in one day, which is absolutely unheard of for me. Well, it's not unheard of, I did it a few weeks ago, but without even trying. So I wasn't like, oh my god, I must sit down for 8 hours today and read 200 pages. I just managed to read it really quickly. Like, it's very easy to read. It kind of reads like a YA, as in the ease of it is like a YA novel. I think that's kind of a benefit to it. It's not kind of dense like a lot of fantasy is, which I don't mind sometimes, but it was quite nice to just have a bit of a relaxed read with this one. So yes, I would definitely recommend if you like Sarah J Maas. Aww, it's okay. So yeah, definitely recommend. If you enjoy fantasy, if you enjoy romance fantasy, this is the one for you. It is something actually I miss quite a lot in fantasy, is the romance aspect of it, because it's kind of put on a little bit of a back burner a lot of the time. Within fantasy that's not YA, YA does have quite, or the ones that I've read anyway, there does tend to be a divide of when you go into adult fantasy, it tends to be a lot less based on romance and more on kind of plot driven war stuff, but I miss that aspect of romance and I quite enjoyed it. So that did put me into a little bit of a reading slump, because there was nothing, I wanted to read the same thing but I couldn't find anything that was the same, so I didn't read anything instead. And the only reason I actually finished this book was because I was doing it for a readathon that I was hosting on my channel, and I was vlogging it, so I had to read it, and I didn't mind that. It meant I finished it, otherwise I don't think I would have, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and that is Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. So I don't have the dust jacket with me. It's now very battered, very bruised. This is another hefty one. This one is 804 pages or something long, and it is so much bigger than Crescent City. So like, if you're intimidated by this but you're not intimidated at this, it doesn't make sense, because they're the same. They're the same, but just different. So don't be intimidated by this. Actually taking it chunk by chunk was much easier, and it made it definitely more manageable, and just mentally kind of getting over that hurdle of getting into it was so much easier. I would say that reading it alongside Crescent City, I did perhaps give a lower mark to this than I necessarily would have, because the ending in Crescent City was a lot better in my opinion. It just had a lot more drama, a lot more twists and turns and plot twists and all that kind of stuff than this one had. It was quite laid out from early on in the book, or from the ending anyway, what was going on, so I did give it a lower star. For those that don't know, this book is about a heck of a lot of things. I don't even know how to summarise it. We have 4 point of views in this book. I can't even describe it. I'm going to have to get Goodreads up, and then I'll say whether or not I think Goodreads is a good description of this book, because it is complicated actually. I don't know how you would narrow it into one streamlined plot. Okay, so this is the Goodreads description of it. A world divided, a queendom without an heir, an ancient enemy awakens. The house of Berethna has ruled Innis for 1,000 years. Still unwed, Queen Zabran IX must conceive a daughter to protect her realm from destruction, but assassins are getting closer to her door. Ea Durain is an outsider at court. Though she has risen to the position of lady-in-waiting, she is loyal to a hidden society of mages. Ea keeps a watchful eye on Zabran, secretly protecting her from forbidden magic. Across the sea, Tane has trained to be a dragon rider since she was a child, but is forced to make a choice that could see her life unravel. Meanwhile, the divided East and West refuse to parley, and forces of chaos are rising from their sleep. So yeah, actually that does kind of encompass it quite well. I would say Ea is definitely the priority of the voices in this. The other 2 voices obviously don't get mentioned on the blurb of Goodreads, so they are definitely not a priority. Tane as well, she's much more bigger at the end, and I would have liked to see more of her, but you know, it is a lot to get in 800 pages, so she did well. She did well. I do think I will try some more of Samantha Shannon stuff. I think her other books are urban fantasies, which might be a bit interesting. I have gotten a lot more into my urban fantasies recently. I used to hate them at all, like completely, and then this year has just been the year of urban fantasies apparently. So we shall see what that's like. If you've read it and you wanted to watch my playlist of all the vlogs that I did for it, you're more than welcome to. It would be greatly appreciated. And if you've not read it and you want to read it, feel free to kind of watch my first video and then plan a kind of mini read along for you, so you can read it at your own pace but then follow along with the videos, if that makes sense. She's using my chair as a scratching post now. Listen! She hates me now. So yeah, so you can follow along now. If you're finding this book quite intimidating to get into or to read, feel free to watch that video, split the book down into chunks. So I split it into 4 weeks and I split it like this, and then took it 30 pages at a time, and I think you'll find that you want to speed up the reading along the process, so it will help, I think, if you're finding it intimidating. So yeah, feel free to watch that video. That's all the books that I read this month. I have a lot of reading to do because I haven't done a lot of reading in a long time, and there are many books that I want to read. So let me know what books you read in March. I'd be interested to know if anyone of the same or different, or would you recommend any of the books that you read. And apart from that, I shall see you in my next video.